Bagram Air Base is not just an airstrip. It's actually a sprawling fortress located in the Parwan province of Afghanistan, about an hour's drive north of the capital, Kabul. For decades, this base served as the very heart of foreign military power within the country. Imagine a small American city dropped into the rugged, mountainous landscape of Central Asia. That was Bagram at its peak. It was a symbol of immense military might, a logistical hub that sustained a war for 20 years, a place where decisions were made that affected the entire region. Its strategic location, nestled between the Hindu Kush Mountains, has made it a coveted piece of real estate for global powers throughout modern history. The importance of Bagram cannot be overstated. It functioned as the main entry and exit point for hundreds of thousands of soldiers, contractors, officials. It was from here that the United States projected its power across Afghanistan and beyond. The base had two massive runways, capable of handling the largest military cargo planes in the world, like the C-5 Galaxy C-17 Globemaster. These aircraft brought in everything from armored vehicles, ammunition, food mail. For the soldiers stationed there, Bagram was a slice of home in a hostile land. The story of Bagram begins long before the arrival of American forces. Its origins date back to the 1950s, a period defined by the Cold War rivalry, United States, Soviet Union. Both superpowers vied for influence in Afghanistan. Afghanistan was then a monarchy trying to modernize. The Afghan government played one side against the other. Washington, Moscow. The Americans first helped build a modest airfield at Bagram. This American involvement was part of a broader strategy of containment. Eisenhower's administration saw Afghanistan as a potential domino. Building infrastructure like Bagram was soft power projection. They envisioned a civilian airport that could also have military applications. Construction in the late 1950s was small scale, a single runway. No one predicted this airstrip would become the epicenter of a global conflict. The early years were relatively quiet. It served the Afghan Air Force. Civilian use, military use, but politics grew unstable. The monarchy was overthrown in 1973. A communist coup followed in 1978. This shift alarmed the Soviet Union. The new government faced rebellion from religious factions. In December 1979, the Soviet Union launched a full-scale invasion of Afghanistan. Bagram Air Base was one of their first and most important targets. Soviet airborne troops descended on the airfield, quickly seizing control and making it their primary operational headquarters. The invasion marked a dramatic escalation of the Cold War. It transformed Bagram from a provincial airstrip into the nerve center of a decade-long war. They immediately began a massive expansion project. Control of the skies and rapid movement of troops and supplies were essential. Bagram grew exponentially. Second runway-hardened aircraft shelters, barracks, command centers, maintenance facilities. The base became a fortress. Minefields, watchtowers, layers of barbed wire. From Bagram, the Soviets launched devastating air assaults, Mi-24 Hind, Su-25 Frogfoot. The base was the logistical backbone, sustaining a 100,000-strong Soviet force, a symbol of overwhelming military power. Despite that power, the Soviets were bogged down in a costly guerrilla war, the Mujahideen, armed and funded by the United States. Following the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, the United States launched Operation Enduring Freedom, and Bagram Air Base once again found itself at the center of a foreign invasion. After American-backed Northern Alliance forces drove the Taliban from power, U.S. Special Operations Forces arrived at the damaged and abandoned base in late 2001. They found a place littered with the remnants of past conflicts, spent Soviet munitions, wrecked aircraft, and crumbling infrastructure. The Americans immediately began the monumental task of rebuilding and expanding Bagram, transforming it into the central hub for what would become America's longest war. Over the next 2 decades, the US military poured billions of dollars into Bagram, turning it into a sprawling military metropolis that dwarfed its previous Soviet incarnation. The base expanded to cover more than 30 square miles, a secure enclave that housed tens of thousands of personnel at its peak. It became a symbol of American power and endurance. The 2 runways were repaired and extended to accommodate the largest military aircraft, allowing for a constant flow of troops, equipment, and supplies from around the globe. Bagram was the beating heart of the NATO-led mission in Afghanistan. The scale of Bagram was astonishing. It was a city with its own distinct rhythm and culture, completely sealed off from the country around it. It had its own hospital, fire department, and power plant. Bagram was far more than just a logistical hub. It was the strategic nerve center for all United States and NATO military operations in Afghanistan. It sat at a key point on the map of the conflict. Within its fortified walls were the command and control facilities that directed the war on a daily basis. From here, generals and their staffs planned major offensives, coordinated airstrikes, and managed the vast network of smaller forward operating bases scattered across the country. The combined Joint Operations Center at Bagram was a high-tech fortress of information, where intelligence data from drones, satellites, and human sources was analyzed in real time to guide battlefield decisions. This capability gave the United States an overwhelming advantage over the Taliban insurgency. The air power projected from Bagram was a decisive element of the war. Its runways were constantly active with a diverse array of aircraft. F-15E Strike Eagles took off on missions to provide close air support. B-1 Lancer bombers launched long-range strike missions, while massive C-130 cargo planes airdropped supplies to remote outposts. Perhaps most importantly, Bagram was a major hub for unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones. MQ-9 Reapers and other surveillance drones provided persistent, round-the-clock eyes in the sky, tracking insurgent movements and targeting high-level enemy leaders. This drone program was a hallmark of the American war effort, and Bagram was its central nexus. Beyond its conventional military role, Bagram was a critical site for intelligence gathering and covert operations. Beneath the surface of the bustling military city, Bagram harbored a darker secret, a detention facility that became a notorious symbol of the harsher aspects of America's war on terror. Known officially as the Bagram Collection Point and later the Parwan Detention Facility. It was often referred to as Afghanistan's Guantanamo. It was here that the United States military held thousands of suspected insurgents and terrorists, often for years, without trial or legal representation. The facility was shrouded in secrecy, operating outside the jurisdiction of both Afghan and American legal systems, which led to widespread condemnation from human rights organizations. The prison's early years were marked by credible and disturbing allegations of abuse and torture. In 2002, 2 Afghan detainees were beaten to death by United States military personnel, a scandal that brought unwanted international attention to the facility and drew parallels to the abuses at Abu Ghraib in Iraq. Former detainees described being subjected to sleep deprivation, stress positions, extreme temperatures, and physical assaults. These methods were part of a system of enhanced interrogation techniques authorized in the early years of the War on Terror, aimed at extracting intelligence from high-value detainees. The prison at Bagram became a powerful propaganda tool for the Taliban, fueling resentment against the foreign presence. In the early hours of July 2, 2021, the last American troops departed from Bagram Air Base. They left in the dead of night, without notifying the new Afghan commander of the base. The electricity was shut off, and the once thriving military city plunged into darkness. This abrupt and uncoordinated withdrawal marked the effective end of the United States military mission in Afghanistan after nearly 20 years. The departure was part of the final drawdown ordered by President Joe Biden, who was determined to end America's longest war. However, the manner of the exit was seen by many Afghans as a final act of abandonment. Within hours of the American departure, looters descended upon the vast, empty base. They swarmed through the gates, scavenging for anything of value left behind. They stripped buildings of copper wiring, they ransacked offices, they carried away scrap metal. The scene was one of chaos and collapse, a symbolic representation of the rapid unraveling of the Afghan state that would follow. The Afghan National Army soldiers who were supposed to secure the base were quickly overwhelmed. The swift descent into anarchy at Bagram was a grim foreshadowing of the Taliban's lightning-fast takeover of the entire country just a few weeks later. The United States left behind a staggering amount of military equipment. While sensitive and high-tech weaponry was removed or destroyed, vast quantities of other supplies were abandoned. This included thousands of civilian vehicles, armored SUVs, In the years following the chaotic withdrawal, Bagram Air Base has re-emerged as a topic of intense debate in American politics, largely due to statements made by former President Donald Trump. During his 2024 campaign, Trump repeatedly lamented the loss of Bagram, calling it a failure in the war against the Taliban and a massive strategic blunder with respect to China. He argued the base's proximity to China made it invaluable for monitoring military and nuclear expansion. Trump said one of his top priorities, if re-elected, would be to regain control of Bagram. He warned about China's growing nuclear arsenal, claiming Bagram sits roughly 1 hour from where China is building nuclear weapons. That claim underscores the base's geographic advantage for surveillance and strike range, noting intelligence reports of hundreds of new missile silos in western China. For Trump, Bagram was not just about Afghanistan. It was a critical piece in great power competition. He called its abandonment a gift to Beijing, removing a key American military and intelligence outpost from China's doorstep. His rhetoric resonated with supporters and with national security hawks. They say the US gave up a multi-billion-dollar strategic asset in the rush to leave. Re-establishing a presence at Bagram, despite difficulty, is pitched as a way to correct that mistake and pressure China. Trump has offered no clear plan to regain the base. Today, Bagram Air Base sits in a state of quiet limbo, a ghost of its former self, controlled by the Taliban's Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. The once bustling runways are largely silent. The sprawling complex is mostly empty. The Taliban government is internationally isolated and facing a severe economic crisis, and lacks the resources and technical expertise to operate or maintain such a sophisticated facility. They've showcased the base as a trophy of victory, but its practical utility is limited. Bagram is a symbol of a new reality. Afghanistan is under Afghan control, yet impoverished and cut off from the world. Regional powers and the international community are watching closely. There are persistent rumors that the Taliban might allow another country to use the base. China is often named as a possible user. Russia is often named as a possible user. For China, access would be a major strategic victory. It would give China a foothold in Central Asia and remove a former American surveillance hub from its periphery. For Russia, access would be a symbolic return after its costly war. The Taliban insist they will uphold Afghanistan's sovereignty and not allow foreign military presence. Their official response to Donald Trump's statements has been defiant. Spokesmen say foreign occupation is over, and any attempt to retake Bagram would meet fierce resistance. They see control as a non-negotiable principle of victory. The silent runways tell a story of empires come and gone,